All right, welcome to the first of its kind, world-changing manufacturers network. Lisa Ryan has her ears to the ground and her heart in the game. Get ongoing education and new connections right here with Lisa and the Manufacturers Network. Buckle your seat, listen, and spread the word. Here's Lisa.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan. Welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. Excited to introduce our guest today, Karla Trotman. Karla is president and CEO of Electrosoft Incorporated. She's an award-winning leader in the electronics manufacturing industry with a passion for workforce development, DEI, and empowering minority-owned businesses. With her extensive experience across business, e-commerce, and family-owned manufacturing, she's on a mission to make manufacturing a welcoming, inclusive, and sustainable career path for future generations. So, Karla, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So share with us a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you do with Electrosoft.
So my background is in business logistics, supply chain, global scheduling, all of those things. But I was fortunate in having a family who started an electronics manufacturing company by accident.
That sounds like a really good story.
Yes. So my father, he was a brilliant man, but at the time we're looking at the late 60s, Black men who were talented in mathematics and science really only had two career paths. That was either become a teacher or to join the military. So my father joined the military, and it wasn't until he was deployed overseas that he had met an Ethiopian engineer. And that's when he had first seen the first instance of a person of color as an engineer doing something in the field and the things that he loved to study. And it was then that he made a decision that he would go back to school when he got back home on the GI Bill and go to school for engineering. And that's what he did. And he worked for many years in that field and wound up getting a master's in computer science. So he was designing, I guess it was blood analyzing equipment at the time, and they were manufacturing the product at the company, and he would oversee the manufacturing and writing of the software for this blood analyzing equipment. But they were losing a lot of money. So he suggested that they go to a contract manufacturer who could give them a firm fixed price on the parts where they're losing money, because they couldn't really get the pricing down for the manufacturing part, all the indirect costs that were associated. And the company was, I think it was Smith, Kline and Beckman at the time, and they shut down the instrumentation division that he was in. He found himself out of a job because they were like, you guys aren't making any money because they were losing a lot of money. And so he took his severance package, and while he was home, someone reached out and asked him, hey, manufacturing, I have these cables that need to be built. Can you build them? And he put them together. He wasn't doing anything. And what ended up happening is that they loved the cables. They asked if he could build more. He had one of the women that worked under him in manufacturing come in and build the cables on the kitchen table. And I would come home from school and help cut wire with a ruler and wire cutters.
Wow.
And that would be used to build the products that ultimately would go into this, what I don't even know what it went into, quite honestly. And they just kept growing from there. So we went from the kitchen table to the garage, and being in Pennsylvania, an uninsulated garage isn't the best business facility. Wound up
I'm in
going.
Cleveland, I know.
Okay. So yeah, same weather band. We wound up going to an incubator space, and the company grew from there. It wasn't something my father set out to do, which is he was going to go back into corporate. That's what we are trained to do that as children, as to get that, go to school, get a good degree, and get that corporate job, and everyone fight for the C-suite. And that's what he was planning on doing until the opportunity came up. And we really didn't even have pictures of the company when it started out, because every year that was fun. I guess we have enough money to keep going. But it wasn't until year 3 that they really started making money. So my mom said, and my mom and dad got together and said, are we going to keep doing this? And she said, yeah, we made money. Let's go. And he said, okay, by the way, we need a second mortgage on the house. So if you can imagine, as a young person, that's not exactly what you want to do. you see the struggle of a startup. And we were living off of my mom's salary at the time. She was a systems analyst for Procter & Gamble. And it's not that we were living in a frugal way because everything was going into this business, which at this point, next month, we celebrate 38 years, was a great investment, right? Of investing in self. But at the time, when you're a child and you really don't understand small business, you're like, why can't you go and get another job where we had a good life? You don't think of the long-term play. So for me, working in a family business was something I was never going to do. And that's why I went into supply chain until I later changed my mind. But for the most part, I did work in the family business growing up. But because of the journey of watching it grow, I had no interest in the family business.
Yeah. You know what? That's such a common story when people are in the family business and then they leave and just unexpectedly come back and find themselves in it again. Yeah, there's hope for parents whose kids are saying, I don't want to be in the family business, because they go out into the real world and then they see, okay, you know what? Maybe that family business, not such a bad thing to do.
Very true. I think that for me, it wasn't until I liked corporate America. It's one of those things where you finish working, you go home and you don't think about it until the next day. It's a very free way to live. And I know a lot of my friends have corporate jobs and they're amazingly successful and great at what they do, and they love it. And it fulfills them in ways that it just did not fulfill me.
Right.
And when you have a family business, you tend to worry about different things at night, on the weekends, during holidays. Your conversations are about the family business. So very much a different lifestyle. But I think I didn't realize until later in life that my grandmother on my mother's side, she had a business as well. So I've always been around small business. But what I've learned recently, or maybe I had this epiphany, was manufacturing aside, we don't really talk about small business as a way to have financial freedom, changing wealth trajectory, because we don't realize that small business can be a lucrative way to have generational wealth, change the trajectory of your family. Most businesses in the country are small businesses. They employ most of the people, but the thing that gets all the glory are the Fortune 500 companies, the publicly traded companies, or the glamorous startups. But really, the lifeline of this country comes from small businesses and family businesses.
Yeah, when you were sharing your story, I'm a huge Shark Tank fan, and it just sounded like so many people getting their start on the kitchen table and putting products together and growing and figuring out that it is the American dream of being able to control your own destiny for the most part.
Absolutely. Like, why do you do it? Why do you sacrifice and do the mortgages on your home and do without if you can't live the dream?
Exactly. I know when I lost my job and decided to be an entrepreneur, I thought my husband would be like, oh, girlfriend, you are going back to work. But I think that whole thing of seeing how happy I was,
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference. There's something really fulfilling about that.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about attracting all different people into manufacturing and creating that mentally appealing and, of course, inclusive environment, what are some of the things that you're seeing as we're reaching out to, as the labor gets harder and harder to find? We need more non-traditional ways of having those conversations, bringing people into manufacturing, but not just to fill slates, to basically to make it inclusive and get ideas from everybody in some ways that manufacturing roles that can't be remote. It's nice when they can be, but a lot of times in manufacturing it's not. So what are some of the things that you're seeing companies do that are working, including what you're doing as well?
So Electrosoft, we are electronics contract manufacturers of benchtop electronics. So we do printed circuit boards, cables, wiring harnesses, box build enclosures, and that's mostly for industrial and defense sectors. And you think about asking someone to come to work in manufacturing and electronics, they're like, we build electronics in the States? I thought all of that had gone over to Asia. And that's not the case. Definitely the high volume is overseas, but for things that need there's IP protection, and you don't want other countries getting their hands on it because you can't enforce those things overseas. The really what we needed in manufacturing was a makeover. I call it a sexy makeover in a sense. When I was in school, no one wanted to be a computer programmer. Now everybody, coding was like the sexy thing. You send your kids to coding camp, they're learning coding in school, like all of that. But it was really, it had a name change. It was shown as important. It was marketed differently. And when you think of manufacturing, we think of all of the ways the movies have sensationalized it as people leaving in their overalls with soot on their face and their lunchbox in their hand, and that they're working on a line. But manufacturing really is about taking something and making it into something else. So a baker is a manufacturer. If you put together office furniture, you're manufacturing. And if you're putting electronics together, that's also manufacturing. It's more of a traditional manufacturer as people think of it. So when we thought of all these things, I'm actually in an organization. I'm a co-chair of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Manufacturing Alliance. And in that program, we decided to hire the Drexel Solutions Institute at Drexel University to help us figure out, why can't we find people? Like, where are they? And what we found through their research was that tomorrow's manufacturers are going to be women, people of color, and immigrants. And they're more prone to be open to the idea of manufacturing. They're able to do the work. It fits their lifestyle. And they were just more interested in it as a career. And so we really figured, okay, we need to target them and change the messaging and cast a wider net. Now, me being a Black woman who owns an electronics manufacturing company, we've always cast a wide net. We always had immigrants. We always had people of color. We always had women. So that wasn't new information for us. But the thought of putting our information, like trying to hire somebody from Indeed or trying to put out an ad somewhere, just wasn't really working. We had to change the way that we attracted people. So we started cultivating relationships with the tech schools, with the high schools, with teachers, with churches, with anybody within the trades that were developing pipelines, so that we weren't just looking and casting out just the net. We were making relationships. So we were creating individual pipelines so that when somebody that would be interested in manufacturing was looking for a position or a job opportunity, apprenticeship, internship, we were able to leverage that. Where I live outside of Philadelphia in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, our county even has money where they will take students who don't know where they want to go after school and give them internships and pay them around $15 an hour to do a 6-8 week internship with a company in one of the company where we're having a hard time hiring people. So that's the construction trades, manufacturing, nursing, and not just nursing, but anything that's helpful within the healthcare industry, and allow young people to get an idea of what career might look like in that. And they could do multiple co-op internships in that. And we've had great success with that. Some of the students end up going to college, which is not a bad thing, and they have a more definitive idea of what it looks like. But this is all what we've had to do to appeal to the next generation. I know companies say, we're not hiring Gen Zs, they're just too difficult to work with. So how's that going to work? Because
exactly,
if your elder statesmen and women are going to be retiring, you're just going to have a generation of workers that don't exist in your company. You really do have to be able to flex and meet them where they are. And I found that they're not unreasonable. They want to know what they're doing. They want to understand. They want to be respected. They want all the things that we would want as adults anyway. They all don't want to work from home. That's a misnomer. I find them to be extremely charming and engaging. Yesterday, they asked me if they could wear pajama costumes for Halloween. They want to create that community and enjoy work. And so you have to be flexible enough to meet them where they are. And they are loyal and they do show up and they want to learn.
Yeah, I have seen that with so many. The same thing with my audiences. They're looking at what they consider a traditional like baby boomer Gen X work ethic. And it's like and I'm going to say these kids, Gen Z, younger millennials, they have a work ethic. They just see the world completely differently than we do.
Yes.
So it's got nothing to do with loyalty, laziness, entitlement, any of that kind of stuff. It's like your company just has to change to be able to adapt to how they see the world. We have these digital natives coming in with technology understanding that is so far beyond what we're wired for, and just being open, because what if they're right?
Yeah, and they also have the opportunity to help you evolve and shift.
Yeah.
I've had them come in and say, why is this set up this way? What do you think it should be? And they change it, and then there's pride in the fact that they change it. And usually it's an upgrade for us.
Yeah, exactly.
In the way that they're thinking. I think I'm like still young in my mind, but
Yeah.
my kids remind me all the time that you are not young. You are in fact old, and they even call me a boomer, and I am a Gen X person. And thankfully, I have a little bit more insight into Gen Z because I happen to have two children who are Gen Zers. And I've had to really learn from them that grit is something that they need to work on. It doesn't
Right.
come automatically. Not looking at your phone you can't just stop doing it when you've been holding a phone in your hand since you were 2 years old. You can't have this. Their reward center of their brain is constantly being activated with every beep, every haptic movement of a device. So they have to, and my son has agreed this summer, actually, my 16-year-old said, you're right. I did not have that ability to focus. So I had to work on focus. I had to work on what it's like to gut something out when you're not engaged totally. And it's in turn helped them become a better student as well, to be able to work through those things. And I think that they realize it, and you help them come to that realization. I've had to help one of our employees do that as well. You need to focus. This is adult time. I need you to stop doing this and that. This is the last chance, really last chance. I don't want to send you out of this building. I think you can do it. Let's work on focus. And they really do turn the corner.
Reminds me, I had a speaking engagement yesterday, and one of the ladies was talking about the misperceptions that we have, because she had a group of interns, and they were going through a training, and one was on his phone the entire time. Took them aside. I know, because she's getting all, I can't believe he's on his phone. And she took him aside. She's like, why were you on your phone? He goes, oh, when the rep was talking, I was doing research and I learned this and this and this.
Yeah.
We have to start to change the way that we judge things. I used to be offended when people were on their phone. And now I'm thinking, you know what? They could be tweeting that I'm the greatest speaker they've ever seen. Yeah, that's it. They're taking notes. When you had talked about bringing sexy back, which I love that.
Yeah.
But really advocating for recognizing workers' authenticity, from tattoos, cultural styling.
Yes.
So what about some examples of how embracing that individuality has really benefited your company culture?
I've had young people come in with the green hair, tattoos up and down their arm and neck and everything else. And they said, what is your policy on these things? I'm like, I don't have a policy. I don't care what you have on your body. Just come and do the work and go home. And that's really all I care about, doing good work. And they seem so relieved that we're so relaxed about it. And I think it's a shame that we want to force people to fit into a box. And as a person of color, I get it all the time. The code switching that I'd grown up learning to do caused me to feel like I couldn't be myself, so much to when I would leave my internships and they would say, hey, we're going to go out and play softball. I can't hold it together anymore. At the end of it's exhausting to pretend that you fit into a place where you really aren't able to be your full self. So I am completely understanding of how these young people feel when they come in, and it's like how you choose to express yourself as a young person. I think it's great, quite honestly, because it shows individuality and it allows them to have a creative outlook. When my kids were young, they wanted to dye their hair green one week and blue another week. And I said, fine, it's just hair. Shave it off when it doesn't look good. And we have to just be more loose when it comes to these things. Because in the grand scheme of things, what are you trying to hire for? What do you want them to do? And does their hair and their tattoos and their nose piercings and all the other piercings where they got all over the place, how's that going to hinder them from doing good work for you? I think they're actually more appreciative that you appreciate who they are as a person.
And I think that when you're looking at, again, younger millennials, Gen Z coming in as far as the most racially diverse, just individually diverse, they come into a company and they just expect it. So they're not surprised by all of this stuff. You just said, if the work's getting done, and the chances are that when you're hiring people that are really expressing their individuality, you're probably bringing in a more loyal employee to begin with, because they know that they're not going to get that chance with a lot of other employers.
You know what I've also found that quite interesting, and maybe it's just a pattern amongst my employees, is that when they have an interesting tattoo, I always ask about it. What is that? And it's usually something very sentimental, or it's something that was an important factor in their life or a symbol that means something to them. And you talk about really hiring the person and talking to them about something that's important to them, and they're wearing it literally on their sleeve, how that endears them to you, and you get to know a little bit more about that person. And I had one conversation about a guy who had a tattoo up his neck, and I was like, good Lord, did that hurt? So we had the whole conversation on pain thresholds and how I can't pick nail polish color. So I can't imagine thinking of a tattoo to go all the way up my neck. And it was like a fun, lighthearted conversation. And so every once in a while I'll go, what nail color did you get this week?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, and I think too, because you have those conversations, it's that radical transparency that you're not afraid to have the conversation that you're finding is endearing your employees to you, but you're also connecting better with them because they probably haven't had managers or bosses in their past that showed that level of personal interest in them. And I think that's it's such an important message. It's not that hard, people. It's about just that level of connection. What can you do to build a relationship of acceptance, inclusivity, belonging, asking yourself, even if they say something that you think is totally off the wall, what if they're right? What if they're seeing something that I haven't seen in 20 years of working in this company?
I love the conversations that the young folks want to have. Usually has nothing to do with anything. And they're so willing to just pop in and really engage you in ways that if you only had a force of people that came in and walked by your door, I find it to be really refreshing.
Yeah. So, and we're talking a lot about attracting young talent to manufacturing because it is a persistent challenge. It's something that I hear about all the time. So what are some of the strategies that you're seeing or that you're doing that are going to make the industry more appealing to the next generations and future generations coming in?
I mentioned the pipelines and having the relationships with the folks that are boots on the ground and interacting with young people. When we started this hiring piece years ago, it was really hard because the young people would be interested in manufacturing, but their parents were like, absolutely not, you're going to go to college. But now we've recently, sorry, I'm in production right now if you hear a buzz. But now what we're experiencing is that parents have spent the money for their kids to go to school. The kids have come out, the young adults actually have come out, and they do not have jobs. And they've gone for the software engineering and all the coding and whatnot. And those jobs are drying up, especially now that technology has shifted and AI has been a huge part of how people are handling these things, that manufacturing and other trades they make more sense. The plumbers they need more plumbers. They need more electricians because everyone has opted to not do those jobs, and they needed more manufacturers. With that change, that shift that parents have felt, they're now more prone to be open to manufacturing. In that, I've been doing a lot of speaking as far as going to tech schools, going to high schools, and changing the minds of continue to talk to the students, but the parents as well, the guidance counselors, so that they can now guide the students down that road if the kids just aren't ready to go to school or don't want to or don't have the ability to make that investment, that they can still have a livable wage, get benefits at 18 years old, and really tell them what it is that you gain from that. Because honestly, I think that because so many companies had shifted manufacturing overseas back in the 70s to take advantage of the cheaper labor rates, that they just also assume that manufacturing doesn't exist here. We haven't done a good job at marketing ourselves. So a lot of it has to do with marketing. I've just finished creating a video campaign of what it's like to work at a company like Electrosoft, what we do, how the parts that we build go into important things like submarines and surface warships and traffic signaling devices. People like to be a part of something big. We made sure we showed that, and we spotlighted the women, the immigrants, the young folks. The Gen Z young woman is the star of the entire commercial that we're going to put throughout social to highlight the type of work that we do. And hopefully it will be used as a template for other companies so that they can hire people in that demographic as well.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, your work in promoting Black generational wealth through minority business empowerment really is inspiring. You're doing so much in that. So how can manufacturing businesses contribute to really bridging that wealth gap in the more underserved communities?
Again, casting a wider net into the Black, brown, the immigrant populations, young women, usually overlooked by manufacturing, to really make a concerted effort to go into the communities to hire people and make concessions around issues such as transportation. If there is a bus, a train schedule that keeps somebody from starting at 7 a.m. or starting at 8 a.m. to have flexibility for when they can start, because people that live in a city and have to travel to your facility, they can't be there exactly on time. Sometimes they even have family obligations. They're helping take care of young brothers and sisters or parents or grandparents. We've done a flexible start and finish time because of those things, and being cognizant of other people's lives outside of work. And it's not just about you being the star of the show all the time. We found that transportation is a huge issue in diverse communities in major cities for people getting around. The intermodal transportation from the closest bus stop or closest train stop to your company, that last mile, looking into finding out if there is any ability to bridge that gap for the last mile. I've had young people walking and riding bikes that last mile to get to the company until they made enough money to either buy a carpool, or use Uber or Lyft in order to get where they needed to be. The other thing is making relationships with diverse communities, such as groups like some of the inner city schools with their guidance counseling office. Also with some of the programs like youth NAACP groups, or even can't think of the name of it. It'll come to me in a minute. But the point is that we need to identify populations that you normally would not think to hire. Just because you put the ad on Indeed doesn't mean that a diverse group of people are going to come. Everyone doesn't have access. Internet is not given to everyone, believe it or not. And so you have to think about, how do I attract a larger pool of people and give them access to careers that they may not have access to.
Wow, such good points. I know that I had one of my clients was saying that they were on an almost anything goes when it comes to scheduling. We will work with you as long as the communication is there. And what you just said about the bus schedule and transportation, I think that for a lot of us, we don't even think about it, because for us, transportation is just an easy thing. It's what you do. But when you're looking for people that don't have that same access, it's really important. And maybe to even try to get to work yourself if you didn't have a car, how easy is it to get to your plant and see maybe what your workers are going through just to do the job they're doing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. I need to share that with people in my manufacturing partnership to see what they come up with. We've tried working with public transportation to see if they can add routes. We've thought about even getting a shuttle from one of the major bus depots and train or subway let off stations and trying to bring it in. It became so cost prohibitive that it just was like you couldn't even figure it out. It's difficult unless they also have programs within workforce development, Chamber of Commerce, that allow you in the beginning while they're training to subsidize their transportation until they get off the ground, because there is a runway. If you haven't been working for a long time or you've been laid off and you got to start back up, that you can't wait for that first check to come in, because you got to pay all these bills that you hadn't been able to pay or had depleted your savings. Some companies I've seen, we've not done it, is they will pay for daily work out of cash because the work has been completed or whatever the need is, so that people can meet their immediate obligations.
Yeah. Wow. We have covered a lot of ground in our time together. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish that I did, that you want our listeners to know about these?
Absolutely. Just one thing. Last month, I had a book come out called Dark, Dirty, Dangerous, and it's about building the vibrant future of manufacturing. And it's not it sounds terrible. It sounds like a boring manufacturing book, but I promise you it's not. It's really it's around the background of my family business, how it started. It gives a little bit more detail of the things that we talked about and the issues that are coming up in manufacturing. But it also has information about why I think entrepreneurship is one of the best ways to create generational wealth and to change the trajectory of your family and to create legacy. I can't think of any other thing outside. You have a job and you've made all these relationships and all these sacrifices, and you can't pass that on to your children. But if you have a family business, that is something that you can take all the sacrifice and pass it on to the next generation. And that's why I love manufacturing, because there's such an uptick right now. There's so many opportunities for people to come in and buy businesses from individuals who are retiring or they'd like to retire. And they're looking for a friendly person to hand it off to, as opposed to private equity, who will still run it with the same care and consideration. I'd love for you to all take a look at the book, check it out. It's on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and let me know what you think.
Okay, awesome. And if people did want to continue the conversation with you, besides getting your book at all of those different things, again, Dark, Dirty, and Dangerous by Karla Trotman. What is a best way for somebody to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up. And I also have a website, karlatrotman.com.
Okay. Karla, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturers Network podcast. Do me a favor and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can grow this network and connect more fantastic folks just like you. You can either send your buddies to the website at manufacturers-network.com or share the Manufacturers Network podcast on your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you and your industry friends hang out. The bigger and faster we grow the network, the stronger and deeper the community we'll all have. Thanks again, and I appreciate you.